There's breaking news from the UK this morning, a scathing report just out about the so-called Partygate scandal. And it is blasting former Prime Minister Boris Johnson for his behaviour during Britain's pandemic lockdowns. Abby Kugalassan is in London. She's just outside Westminster. Abby, what are the key findings in this massive report?
This damning report says Boris Johnson lied, that he misled Parliament deliberately, that he misled this committee deliberately on multiple occasions. And of course, this is all to do with those lockdown gatherings that were held at number 10 Downing at a time when the government had asked the British people not to gather, not even for funerals. This committee has now recommended a 90-day suspension for Boris Johnson. But of course, as we know, the former Prime Minister received an advance copy of this report sometime last week on Thursday, and on Friday he quit as an MP. He lashed out in his resignation letter, that 1,000-word resignation letter, saying that this committee was a kangaroo court. He accused the cross-party panel featuring 7 MPs of staging and mounting a witch hunt against him. And he says today, in response to this report being made public, that this conclusion is absolutely deranged. He called it rubbish. So certainly the Tory infighting, the scandals around Boris Johnson have not gone away. He's not in Parliament any longer. What happens next, Heather, is Parliament will vote on this report, whether they are going to accept it and essentially turn on Boris Johnson. And some Conservatives, supporters of his, are already saying that any Tory who votes against Boris Johnson is not a true Conservative. Of course, this is a massive headache for Rishi Sunak, who had hoped to leave his predecessor in the review mirror.
Abby, we have seen of late the fighting. You mentioned the word fighting, and we've seen the current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the past Prime Minister Boris Johnson publicly at odds. So what is the impact of these findings likely to be then?
Heather, we know there is no love lost between Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson. They used to be close political allies, but that rift really started when Rishi Sunak helped oust Boris Johnson from number 10 Downing sometime last year. But in recent days, it has really turned into open warfare, and that has a lot to do with this honours list. It's a convention here in the UK that an outgoing Prime Minister can reward some of his peers and some other people with potential lifetime appointments, for example, in the House of Lords. And in recent days, Johnson has said that his list was tampered with, that people were left off of it, and he blames Sunak for it. Sunak hit back earlier this week, saying this is all up to an independent body. He did not interfere. But we do know that one of the MPs who was left off the list has resigned. Another says she will do so. We know Boris Johnson has resigned. All of this means the Tories now face 3 by-elections that they're not guaranteed to win. Massive headache for Rishi Sunak. Another headache for him, of course, some of his critics say he's not a winner. So if he loses these by-elections, that criticism can absolutely ramp up. Because after all, he didn't win a general election to secure his position as the Prime Minister. He wasn't even elected by party members to enter number 10 Downing, and that criticism could potentially ramp up. Some Tories who feel that Sunak has actually led to more stability in recent months now fear that Boris Johnson is stirring things up and, really ruining that and causing greater strife within the Tory party.